Hi, welcome to Navel Gazing on valleyindy.org and 103.5 WNHH, New Haven's community radio station. Today's episode is brought to you by Valley Gives Back, a new initiative of the Valley Community Foundation. Adding a charity to your estate plan creates a legacy that tells future generations what causes matter to you during your life. Your action inspires others to follow your lead and to make a difference. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact your community forever without affecting your current lifestyle. For more information, visit valleygivesback.org. The Valley Gives Back is an initiative of the Valley Community Foundation, connecting private philanthropy to the long-term public good of the Valley. Plan now, give later, impact tomorrow. valleygivesback.org.
Hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur, yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the...
Hey everybody, I'm Eugene Driscoll. Welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indies podcast. We're also heard on 103.5 FM, WNHH, New Haven's community radio station. This is our post-election podcast. It's about 10 p.m. Thursday, what is it, November 8th?
Yeah.
9th. Okay, I'll go with that, November 9th. And I'll go around the table here and introduce the co-host and guests. With me, as always, is Valley Indy reporter Ethan Fry.
Hello.
And our two guests. This is a multi-guest podcast because we'll even have somebody tomorrow who's not here. Let's talk to the future.
Up right.
Chris LaRoque, a Derby resident.
Absolutely.
And Stefan Bahuniak, a member of the Seymour Board of Selectmen.
Good evening.
Now get close to that mic. You know you got to get there. You
Good evening.
Everybody can hear you now. So, Chris, I know you from your involvement in the Naugatuck Valley Young Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you talk close to that mic too, so we can hear you.
Yeah, we'll do
so
that. This is my first time.
I don't know if you're not necessarily representing them tonight.
That's certainly important to know that I speak for myself only and not for the group, although I am a member.
So I wanted to talk about the election in general that we just had here in the Valley, and you had a post on your Facebook feed that I found fascinating, because a lot of people have been talking about it in general, sort of the national races and how they have played or didn't play or impacted or influenced what happened locally. And you basically said that, I'll let you say it. You talked about Trump and how Trump is sort of a thing in the Valley where it might not be elsewhere. In the national race, like in Virginia, we saw Democrats doing well, and the kind of the national media narrative is that this was a complete slap in the face to Trump. Am I right?
Repudiation.
Ethan? That's the word. I didn't want to say it and get it wrong. But we didn't see that here. And talk about why. What's your reaction? What do you think happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to know that, a lot of the places that you saw the repudiation of Trump tended to be a slightly different demographic than you have over here. You had races in New Jersey and also in Virginia, like you had mentioned, but you also had races that are a little closer to home, places like Trumbull. And, I looked out at the landscape and I saw a stark difference. And I said, you know what, I think it's worth saying something about, because, the more affluent and the more, well-educated and stuff that people that you have in those particular places, you tend to find that they repudiate Trump, whereas when you have, a little more blue-collar areas, they tend to, they're still on the Trump train, and that what Trump has to say and his particular policies, some of his policies certainly, and his ideas resonate, and you saw that I think you saw that in the lower Naugatuck Valley, and I think you saw that as part of why you now have an entirely red Naugatuck Valley, especially in the lower Naugatuck
And you
Valley.
think in Derby, Trump, people who didn't vote for Mayor Delgado and voted for Rich Zekin, Trump played a part in that?
Well, I mean, you have to. It's a little more complicated than that because especially in the case of New Jersey, you had a very, very, very unpopular Republican governor, and so all politics is certainly local, and there were some things that had happened in Derby through the primary. We had a primary, and it fractured the Democratic Party in town, and that certainly had something to do with it also. So you can't make direct correlations, but I think that you can look at it and you can really, see what I wrote in my post as, fissures. And you could see where places were staying, true to Trump and where places were leaving him.
Fry.
I think that's one.
Wait,
I think.
Hold on, you're blowing out.
Oh, sorry.
That's my fault.
One, I think it's important that, as you say, there are sort of unique factors. So, like, I've been thinking about this the past couple of days. So, I don't want to read too much into it. Like you said, there was the Democratic split in Derby and Ansonia. You've got a very popular two-term mayor who's good at the sort of handshaking people on the street, stuff like that. At the same time, given what happened, and as you say, it's more of a working class electorate here, and I guess the message didn't resonate from the Democratic candidates. Isn't it incumbent on the Democratic Party now, especially in the Naugatuck Valley, to move toward the working class, to move quote unquote leftward? I'm using scare quotes, toward a more sort of working class oriented politics rather than winning, or would that risk losing the communities like the Glastonburys and the Trumbolls and the communities like that the Democrats saw gains on Tuesday?
Well, I mean, ultimately, all politics is local, and the local spin is going to be probably just as important as broader trends. But yeah, I mean, the Democratic Party, absolutely, and especially as younger members like myself and Stefan, I feel like that we need to do a lot of soul searching in that respect and figure out how to maintain our values and the things that we believe in as Democrats, but also at the same time to get on the level and not look over blue collar working class neighborhoods and working class cities like Derby and Ansonia.
No, Stefan. Now, is it Stefan or is it Stefan? Stefan. Not Stefan. Stefan. Oh, so I've been saying it right all these years.
Despite what Kurt Miller will say.
Okay. All right, good. That's where I'm getting it from. Oh, we got to talk about Kurt Miller. But so you just went through an election.
Sure
and
did.
you could see it on your face. You look tired. How are you holding up?
I'm exhausted, frankly.
So when you were out there, did Trump or Trumpism or the national politics, did it ever come into play? Like when you were knocking on doors, did people just say, "Oh, dirty liberal"?
No,
Shaking your head.
I got to be honest with you. I don't think it did in Seymour. I heard, if anything, I heard a lot of anti-Trump rhetoric, which I thought was predictable. Seymour is a little different than Derby and Ansonia in the fact that I would call it somewhere in the middle of, if you have Ansonia and Derby on one side and you have Glastonbury and Trumbull on the other side, we fall somewhere in that middle. We have a lot of blue collar people. We have a lot of people, as we call it, up on the hill, who it's kind of a bedroom community up there. There's some really nice affluent neighborhoods, and I think to Chris's point, what you see in terms of any sort of backlash to Trump, I think you see the people who were his base from the beginning, the people who made up that 25 to 30% that supported him in the primaries. Those people haven't gone anywhere. And I think a lot of those people live in Ansonia, Derby, parts of Seymour. I think the people who were slow to come around, some of the late adopters, I think those people have been the first to jump off the train. And there's some of those people in Seymour, certainly a lot of those people in the Trumbulls, the Glastonburys of the world. But anybody who tells you that a local race is decided on one factor is, it's just not true. There's a lot of factors. Nobody's going to really be able to pinpoint all of the factors, because I can say in Seymour's race, we Democrats actually performed just as well, if not even a little bit better than we did in 2015 before Trump. And we had a top of the ticket candidate who ran a very strong campaign in Zani Matowski
In 2015.
In 2015. This year we didn't have one. And Kurt Miller performed well. Obviously, he was unopposed. His selectman slate performed about the same as they did in 2015. Down ticket, we performed a little better than we did in 2015. So, what do you want to call that? You can say that some people in Seymour are displeased with Trump. I think you can make that argument based on the results of the special election in February, where Greg Kava actually won Seymour. The first time, Democrat has won a race in Seymour in a while. He won his portion of Seymour. Or you can say maybe we campaigned a little harder. Maybe we did. I think I would say we did.
Yeah, like one I saw one quote. You talked about like local politics. There was a quote, I think, from the Glastonbury election from a Republican saying like, yeah, it was a big Trump backlash. Oh, and people were really upset about the air conditioning issue at the elementary school. It was like the perfect embodiment of the local race. But I mean, given the fact that if you sensed, if anything, an anti-Trump sort of feeling out there, the guy's got a approval rating in the high 30s. That's the best measure we have. So
that's not a Valley Indy online poll. Just
it's like Rasmussen or Pew or whatever. So like, why not proactively make that? And hey, Kurt Miller, this is the party of Trump. All these people. Why not make that an issue?
Well, there's a couple
or Rich Zekin for Chris. Like why not make that an issue?
Well, speaking to myself, and this is something that I've said on here before, I don't think you should be allowed to run on a Democratic or Republican slate in a municipal election. I think the issues are so dissimilar at the municipal level to the national level, and your average person is just thinking about the national issues when they go in there and they see Democrat or Republican. So to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to run on a strong anti-Trump platform right now, particularly considering, to be fair to Kurt, he was not, a brash Trump supporter.
Jumping up and down, right.
He was a Kasich supporter.
He voted for the guy.
He voted for Trump, which hold his feet to the fire on that, if you will. But he's one of those who held his nose against him because he couldn't tolerate a Hillary Clinton. And in the position he's in, he certainly sees himself, and many see him as a leader of the Republican Party at the state level through his work with CCM, and now his potential running for state office.
Well, should we segue into this?
He has to play the role of the good Republican.
This is very interesting. Now I tried to get Kurt Miller onto he might be on tomorrow. He couldn't come on tonight because about 8 p.m. 2 hours ago, he posted to his personal Facebook page that he has formed, after much consideration and thought, I am excited to announce that I have opened an exploratory committee for statewide office. My plan is to spend the next few weeks talking with folks across the state to determine if I should move forward and what position on the underticket would most benefit the state of Connecticut. His campaign website is still under construction, and he established a fundraising page, kurtforct.com, to start collecting donations. My goal is to raise the needed $75,000 in donations to qualify for the Citizen Elections Program by early next year. So, I guess it's surprising, not surprising, because he says every time they nominate him, the Republicans at the nominating convention, he says, this is it, this is the last one. He's like Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. I'm too old for this. I'm hanging it up. Yeah. So, were you surprised? What's your reaction to that?
I'm not surprised at all. This is something that I expected. I understand why he waited until just after.
Yeah, that surprised me. Election. Hey, wait a second. You just got reelected.
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, it's a purely political move to wait till just after the municipal election, because he doesn't. It's a very easy thing for the opposition to target something like you already have one foot out the door, and we didn't run anybody against him, so it wouldn't affect his chances of getting reelected, but it could certainly sway some of the down ticket races. So yeah, it's a totally politically calculated move, without a doubt.
What's he going for?
I think he
comptroller.
I don't think he's going for comptroller. I don't think he thinks he has a prayer to beat Kevin Lumbo. I don't
No,
think,
yeah,
I don't think anybody
I
thinks they could beat
was-
Kevin Lembo.
Well,
Yes,
he's always
facetious of
spoken.
me.
He's always spoken very highly.
yeah, he
of
likes
Lembo.
Kevin Lembo,
Yeah.
quite frankly.
So lieutenant governor under Loretti.
I think if Loretti is the likely nominee, Kurt will certainly make a push for lieutenant governor. Him and Loretti are very close. Kurt is, one of his great champions. To that point, I think Kurt will have no problem raising the $75,000 because Mark Loretti is a fundraising machine, and I think a lot
Mark
of
the
that money
Shark.
will trickle down right to Kurt. State treasurer is something else that I think he'd be in line for. Obviously not like attorney general, and I don't see him being a secretary of the state type. So I think it's between lieutenant governor and treasurer.
And he was a former Board of Finance chairman, I think, in Seymour.
Yes, yeah, that's where he got
treasurer
his start in
Be
in Seymour
a
politics.
good fit. If I would like, would they have a ticket like that with one guy from Shelton and one guy from Seymour? Would they want to try to use that lieutenant governor like the Democrats did with LBJ in 1960 to like have some guy from some other corner of the state to try to capture a make it a more geographically diverse ticket? Do you think?
If I'm the
I mean, assuming Loretti, there's a lot of ifs.
there's what 19 Republicans right now in the race.
It's easier to name people who aren't in it.
Yeah, pretty much. If Loretti and Kurt are on a ticket together, I think you'll see the state Democratic Party jumping for joy, because the Valley it's tiny in Connecticut politics. Not to say anything necessarily negative about Kurt and Loretti as people or as candidates, but if the perception from the state Democratic Party will be one of great joy if the two of them are running together, and that's what we have to go up against, because they're not gonna make a dent in the cities, and that's where Democrats get their votes.
Has he been? I guess we'll ask. Well, we'll ask him all this if he comes on tomorrow, and he won't answer any of them. Knowing Kurt about this specifically, but could he be angling for a spot with Themis if she is?
Kurt has gotten himself into a really good position through his work with CCM, his connections with the Valley, obviously, because right now the Valley is the hub for Republican politics in Connecticut, as we see. I mean, it's going.
CCM's the
J.R.
Connecticut
Romano.
Conference of Municipalities.
Right,
The
sorry.
Oh,
lobbying, who lobbies on behalf of municipalities,
Correct.
towns, whatever.
So through that connection, he's very close with Mark Boughton, another of the leading candidates. Through his localized work, he's very close with Themis Claridis for obvious reasons. He's very close with Mark Loretti. I know he's close with Tim Herbst. So you look at those four, possibly the four leading candidates for a Republican, and he's put himself in a great position to be very cozy with any of them.
Hi, this is Eugene, most likely interrupting myself to bring you a message from our sponsor. What will you be remembered for? Adding a charity to your estate plan creates a legacy that tells future generations what causes mattered to you during your life. Learn more at valleygivesback.org. It's an initiative of the Valley Community Foundation. Plan now, give later, and impact tomorrow at valleygivesback.org. Now back to the show. Getting back to Trump and whether I never thought of Trump or anything that was happening in the national scene the whole time we were covering these elections. Like, it never occurred to me.
Well, I mean,
even as the results came in.
That's why I asked, why not make a more
I think
of an issue of
that
this,
would, to
this
me,
guy
that would
with
be
a terrible approval rating?
I think personally, like in the Valley and Derby and Ansonia, you'd lose votes if you did that. Because I don't think people, in my personal opinion, and just somebody who, I've only lived in Derby for 10 years, but I didn't think that had anything to do with what happened in Derby on Tuesday. And I think I was surprised, frankly. Like, one of the fundraisers was called Keep Derby Blue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfectly legitimate to say that, but because there's so many unaffiliated.
Yeah.
And just in my experience, a lot of times in Derby, even at some of the meetings, you can tell who, if parties, if the two individuals don't like each other, you can tell. But you can't tell if they're Democrat or Republican often. It's not that partisan. So even that, I was surprised just to see that, because I thought some people would be like, oh, like they would turn their nose up at that because they don't like that kind of conversation coming into the local thing. So, and I would think if you campaign locally and mention Trump, you're just asking people to vote against you. It's sort of I mean, people wanted real local answers. That's just my opinion on that. And you're just okay.
I think he's said and done enough objectively.
I think there's a wall. I think people
things
just put that out of their heads
that
locally.
If you know, I think you should at least ask the question or raise it as an issue. That's just but I've never run a campaign. If I did, I'd probably lose
that's what
it.
we both say.
That's something that surprised me, but.
Like, I thought
I'm speaking with the advantage of hindsight too.
Right.
And as we said at the beginning, you know, these were unique races. There were, you know, I mean, the victor on the Republican side in Derby said it was the Marshall Lane Manor was the decisive issue. Like we said in Ansonia, you've got a mayor who's very, you know, people like honk to they were driving by on the sidewalk and stuff. I mean, he's a good retail politician, as his opponent said. But I just, you know, I guess I'm more surprised in Ansonia in the face of that sort of popular mayor. Like, why not try, I guess. But we don't have an Ansonia Democrat here to ask, so perhaps that's unfair.
I mean, I just think you'd just be hurting yourself. That's just my opinion. I think it's more about like what it really is knocking on doors. I mean, I thought in Derby, like you can't underestimate how that divide within the Democratic Party had to play a part. You know, in at the end.
Oh no, absolutely.
You know, some people could. I mean, the fact that you're on now, we'll get that. There'll be some stuff on Facebook. That's that guy, Chris LaRoe. You know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because right. You know, there is that. I thought the Naugatuck Valley Young Democrats, you guys did some disruption, right? Isn't that the phrase?
Oh, absolutely.
There was definitely some disruption done. But on one hand, like it definitely got the mayor through the primary, but it's also stirred up this hornet's nest of just activity in Derby. You know, it kind of threw everything just up in the air.
Yeah.
I just thought that was more. That's why Trump never ever came into my head in Derby.
Well, I think though, I think a little bit of the perspective that you want to look at it from is going to make a little bit of a difference here, because I always thought that one of the things that one of the reasons Trump had an impact, and the reason why I felt like part of that was happening was because of the fact that like he would just keep going on with these unnecessary sort of like tangents with the NFL and the flag and okay. Certainly it's important to respect the flag and stuff, but to make a bigger deal out of it, and there are people that I work with and people that I know and that are like, why doesn't he just stop with this sort of stuff?
Oh, so you're saying, okay, I think I misunderstood you then, so you're saying that his effect in the Valley might have been in Derby or Ansonia among blue collar workers or whatever. Because we're below. I mean, you look at our paycheck. We're the working poor, but so that could make them go in and just vote across the board Republican. He's got them. Fired up
absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the I think
that's a little different than what I thought.
Yeah, I definitely think is one of the things that it did is it sort of kept them on a slow simmer, and it gave them reasons to still be aggrieved about things and still be met. And then all of a sudden, at a local level, all you have to do is just take one or two issues, and they're already primed and ready to go. So, and I think the Republicans did that very effectively in this. And it worked really well.
Do you guys get the sense that maybe, let's talk about Derby specifically. Do you think Derby resident, the average Derby, or the average resident that came out and voted on Tuesday, they're more in tune with what's happening in their community than elsewhere? I mean, I'll go to you as you've covered a bunch of towns over the years. You've covered a bunch of elections in different places, different socioeconomic makeups. Do you get the sense that Ansonia people are more tuned into what's happening in their community than elsewhere?
Well, I think you have to approach it from the fact that most people don't vote most eligible people don't vote in local elections. So by definite, the people who do vote, yeah, they are.
Damn,
But
the answer is the Valley's way more in tune. I'm gonna do a McLaughlin. What was that guy's name? John McLaughlin.
On a scale of 1 to 10,
Wrong.
1 being completely oblivious, 10 being.
I totally get the sense. Even I think about where I grew up in Somers, New York, where it's like nobody followed the issues. Everyone just voted along whatever party they were a member of. There was always more Republicans, so the Republicans always won. That's the way it was in like Northern Westchester. Nobody really. But here you get the sense that people are really, they have a stake in it. That's why I thought it would be a mistake to bring in the national stuff, because people were more concerned about, people were in tune with Marshall Lane Manor. I could feel it at the debate.
Yeah.
Trying to talk about Marshall Lane Manor, and like the room just was the only time of the whole night where the room just kind of went, it was like just.
Well, like
and I saw you cheering at one point,
Marshall,
breaking the rules. I turned over my shoulder. There's Steve. Stefan.
I don't think I could have been any further
didn't
from
you
you at
think?
the debate.
Didn't you
Cheering
think
away.
a flavor of that Marshall Lane Manor debate, as it's played out, not only at the debate but at these meetings? Don't you think there's a flavor of, xenophobia with that? Don't you think that's sort of stoked by Trump and the hard right wing of the Republican Party? Don't you think there's an aspect of
Yes.
that?
I think yes.
I think that. I didn't go to those meetings. You cover them. I
mean,
didn't get the sense from our
every
coverage
comment
that there
thread
was,
we have illegals. The word illegals. We're gonna have
that's
illegals
online.
in there.
Listen,
I moderated
No,
comments
that's
before
online,
Trump.
but
In 2006, I moderated comments. Racist people love the internet.
Sit through one of those meetings. Sit through one of those meetings. You'll hear those comments in person. Not all of them. Not everybody.
Hell, we underreported that.
Not
then.
everybody. Well, look at that orange flyer. I mean, that's total xenophobia. Right
Yeah,
there.
it was a hit job.
Well,
I
the
just
thing,
thought the
the thing from my perspective with the Marshall Lane Manor,
And again, that's
is-
not all the opposition to it. Just wanna
certainly.
stress
But there's a lot of people who hear that these are kids coming from foreign countries. In the era of Trump, I think a lot of people don't look any further than the word foreign, and attached with people.
I think you guys are selling the Derby residents short.
Listen, no. This is just in regards to that issue. I don't know how much of a factor it played. I mean, when a candidate loses by 500 votes, you can't say that one issue that came up a couple weeks before the election was the deciding
that's
factor.
definitely true.
You can't say that. But I will say to this issue is, and this is something that irks me, is people right on your comment page or right on your page in the comment section will say, I don't want these kids in here. What are they going to do on the weekends? We don't know what these kids are like. We don't know anything about them. And then all the data and all of the facts point to these kids being, way less disruptive than your average Derby high schooler or Seymour high schooler for that matter, or any high schooler who lives in a community, has free reign in the community. These kids were like are going to be in a pseudo prison setting where they're very regimented in every action that they do. And people are freaking out because they're expecting these kids to come up their backyards in a burglar mask because they're from a different country. It's something where people just don't like change. They don't like accepting different people into their community, whether they will say it or not. It's just a kind of guttural reaction.
So you knocked on doors in Derby on the hilltop.
Absolutely.
What did people say about it?
And
that's Chris LaRocque.
That is. Generally they were worried about, they were certainly worried about property values. They were certainly worried about the sort of people that were coming in. I don't want to say that all of them were xenophobic, but you got a flavor of it, and you got a flavor. It was kind of like, it was like a half a Sunday was just not knowing who the people were and stuff like that, and then the other half of the flavor was not caring.
I thought, it's a weird use.
No, undoubtedly.
I think
people don't like.
I would be more
weird.
upset with
It's
the way it's come about is you have these informal talks which we are sort of leery of as reporters. I think with this we'll have informal talks, then we don't have to. It doesn't trigger any FOI or anything like that. Then they come before the commission, and then they essentially get the commission to write a new regulation into the zoning code. And I think that is, just looks sort of hinky from the outside. I mean, I think that's sort of more objectionable than what the use actually is.
And I mean weird use in that, I mean, it was a nursing home. You bought a home there. It was always a nursing home. Who thought nursing homes would go away? You know, I mean, if I'd lived there, I'd be a little like, what are they trying to do there? I think the timing of it.
Well,
if
that's something that some people.
If it had
Yeah.
come a year ago, and it had everyone kind of freaked out, and then they had time to flesh it all out. But I think it did kind of scare people because I don't know, if I lived there, I never thought a nursing home would go away. Now you're trying some use. These kids are going to a private school. I mean, great.
Speaking as somebody from Seymour, where economic development, you know, in Seymour, we envy Derby and Ansonia for what they've been able to do over the last few years in terms of bringing in new businesses. What you hear is, you know, we need creative solutions to bring in new businesses or put things on the tax rolls, and right here is a creative solution, and people are the immediate reaction is to pull away from it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not in my
that's true.
backyard.
Yeah, so
You know?
people want creative solutions as long as they don't disrupt the apple cart, and it's hard to find those.
That's like we had
Quite frankly.
Sheila O'Malley, Ansonia's economic development director and grant writer, in here just on a lark to talk about, hey, what if the Bridgeport Bluefish came right here? And our Facebook, damn you to hell, Valley Indy. I was like, whoa, we just need to kill 30 minutes of this podcast. I thought it was an interesting idea. But people are even against that.
Yeah,
So-
well, they
It's all Trader Joe's, man. If it ain't Trader Joe's
Yeah.
or Whole
Oh,
Foods,
God.
people don't want to know. Or Stu Leonard's.
People are like 20 years behind in the things that they would like to see in their communities, I think.
Yeah.
20 years ago, Trader Joe's would have been great. Who knows if Trader Joe's is going to exist in 10 years? You know, big retail stores are going away.
Yeah, that's
Quite
terrifying.
frankly, they really are.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
We'll all just be getting
and you-
Soylent Green from Amazon
Right.
drones.
And you could long
George Soros.
and you could sit around longing for the days of those things, or you can move into the future, try to get ahead of the next wave. You know, what we need to do is focus on getting people into manufacturing again. You know, these high tech jobs, into computer science fields. You know, we need to tell people it's okay not to go to college, but we need to have an alternative, a real alternative for them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things, there are places in Seymour, I'm sure in Ansonia, right here, downtown Ansonia, if you could put up a community college, or you could put up some sort of trade school, some sort of technology education facility here, that could be a huge boon to the area, and that could attract companies, that could attract young people to the community. But instead, we have so many people who are hung up on the idea of, the people. Cassetti says, well, we're going to get an Arby's. Nobody has any idea if that's actually going to happen. Maybe not, but people are like, wow, that'd be great. We need another fast food place.
All right,
I'm good.
So I want to thank Chris LaRoque, Stefan Bohuniak, Chris LaRoque of Derby,
Yep.
Stefan Bohuniak, member of the Seymour Board of Selectmen. Thank you so much for coming with no notice and for doing this podcast.
No, thanks for having us.
Thank you, as always, for having me. Always a pleasure.
And we're actually not going to end, because now in the next part, if it all works out, next up will be Drew Backlick, who was Rich Zekin's campaign manager.
Cool.
Interesting to hear what he has to say. So we have a special guest. I said our next guest would be Andrew Backlick, Rich Zekin's campaign manager. But we have with us on the line J.R. Romano, chairman of the State Republican Party. Hello, J.R.
Hey, Eugene, how are you?
So you're joining this podcast. This is actually 30 minutes in. Just before this, I had talked to two members of the Naugatuck Valley Young Democrats, Stefan Bohuniak, one of them a member of the Board of Selectmen in Seymour. And we've been sort of rolling around with this idea of the Trump effect in the Valley, because we've seen this narrative and a couple of stories saying, well, Tuesday night nationally and in most of Connecticut was this rebuke of President Trump and his policies.
Well, but Eugene, that's not actually true. Not even close to true. So, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, let's take nationally. New Jersey and Virginia are Democrat states, right? So Chris Christie was the most unpopular governor in the country, only to be followed by Dan Malloy, and his lieutenant governor was running. It's New Jersey. It's not like we're talking about a quote-unquote red state. Now let's take Connecticut. Some of those victories that Democrats had, although they would love to think that it was about Trump, in I think about 8 or 9 of those communities, you had nasty GOP primaries leading up to the election. to a divided party, similar in Derby, right? And I'm sure the Democrats would claim that that's why Anita lost, right?
That what? That it was the Trump effect, or that it was the primary?
Split in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Right? So basically in Guilford, Clinton, Farmington, New Canaan, Greenwich, and there was a couple others where you had primary leading up to the general election.
Well, let me jump in for a second. All those places, I don't even know where they are on a map. We're so Valley. I don't go beyond Division Street.
I understand that. I'm
So,
saying that they're claiming these massive victories across the state as a Trump effect, but when you dive deep into the local politics, it's just not true.
Yeah, so let's talk about like Derby and Ansonia specifically.
Sure.
And we had this conversation on this podcast previously. I didn't, when I was doing reporting on the Derby race and the Ansonia race, President Trump or anything happening on the national level never occurred to me. I didn't think it was an issue at all. Do you think Trump in any way had anything to do with the results in Ansonia Derby?
No, I think, and this is again, the old adage, all politics is local. I think the voters in Ansonia thought and believed that Mayor Cassetti was leading the city the right way, and has appreciated how he's treated taxes in the city. And I think in Derby, you have a situation where it was the exact opposite, where the citizens felt that Anita was not leading the city properly, and she was voted out.
And what about Rich Zekin's campaign was sort of remarkable in a way to me, and I'd like to get your take on it. It was pretty grassroots. I mean, Andrew Backlick was his campaign manager. He had no experience running a municipal campaign before. What's your assessment of how he did? What was their strong points?
So one of the things, and this is where what you can argue where Trump did have an effect, is energizing certain members of the Democratic Party, and engaging them, right? Like the Naugatuck Valley young Democrats popped up because of Trump, right?
I'd say that's accurate.
Now,
yeah.
Their effectiveness in the Valley didn't matter, right? They were not successful at anything they attempted.
Other than probably helping Anita Mayor Delgado defeat Carmen DeCenzo in the primary.
Sure, right, in the primary, sure. By getting out, so Democrats were really focused on turning out Democrat voters, because in cities like Derby and Ansonia, they actually outnumber Republicans, right? So the Democrats are turning more and more towards their base, but it didn't work. And so with Drew, I worked with these guys in understanding and preparing for a potential uptick in Democrat participation, adjusted our numbers, and told Rich he had to knock doors. And he knocked, and he knocked, and he knocked.
So the advice or the takeaway in Derby is really you can't get too partisan. I guess for one right wing or left wing, you have to be sort of in the middle to appeal to the most of the unaffiliated voters.
Well, but let's think from an entirely different perspective. A community like Ansonia or Derby, which are small, you know each other for the most part. You have interactions on a daily basis with the people. So when you try to slam someone for being a Trump voter or these really over the top national messages to your, like I would never look at Carmen DeCenzo, who I've known my entire life. He actually gave me my first job, and say you're this horrible liberal. I would never do that. Now we may disagree on things, but that's kind of where I think some of the national narrative didn't play. And here's the other thing too, Eugene, and I know the young Democrats, and to your point about not, this being a show about the Valley and the towns in the Valley, when you look at where the Democrats were successful, they were successful in liberal, or let me rephrase that, wealthy liberal Democrats came out to vote in municipal elections for the first time in a long time. So basically the Democrats in our state turned out the 1%. Glastonbury, Guilford, New Canaan. They didn't. Democrats in places like Norwich and Derby and Ansonia voted for Republicans. Mm-hmm. Middle-class Americans are turning to the Republican Party for help because they can't afford the taxes that have been pushed on them. So it's a very interesting dichotomy what's happening with the left and the right.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And so just getting back to the point about the local race and how to get or how to not get partisan in it. One thing that I was struck by was Mayor Delgado had a fundraiser that it was themed "Keep Derby Blue,"
which I think was a mistake.
Yeah, now explain, because Rich wouldn't do one saying "Turn Derby Red," right? Just explain why you thought that was a mistake.
Well, and it's something that we pointed out in what is so great about your the Valley Independent Sentinel in terms of the chatter that's online is I think one of the young Democrats was called out for that. All Anita Delgado was worried about was keeping Derby blue, keeping Derby blue. Well, you know who doesn't care about that? The guy or the family, the single mom whose property taxes went up, who's frustrated at downtown, who feels like the city's not working the right way. They don't care whether it's red or blue. They just want their city to be better.
Interesting. And then, JR, last thing I wanted to ask you about was last night on Facebook, Seymour First Selectman W. Kurt Miller posted that he has or is forming an exploratory committee to ponder whether he is going to make a run of some kind for statewide office. And we had Stefan Bohuniak, who's a Democrat on the Board of Selectmen in Seymour under Miller. Bohuniak was saying Miller's well-positioned because he's friends with Themis, he's friends with Mark Loretti, he's close with Mark Boughton, Herbst. Everybody loves Kurt Miller. So
everyone does love Kurt Miller.
So what do you think he's going to do? We're thinking lieutenant governor under Loretti. What is he doing? You know.
I don't know. I mean, he's exploring a statewide run, so that could be one of many different races. But what everyone needs to understand about Kurt is he's done an unbelievable job. In fact, in Seymour, they've done such a great job that they were going to be a community that was massively penalized by Dan Malloy's cuts because they had done such a good job in terms of maintaining and keeping their fund balance and keeping their finances in order. And that's a credit to Kurt and the Republicans in Seymour, that we were on a list to be penalized for the success they had in Seymour. So it's kind of ironic. But Kurt has done a tremendous job. He served on State Central. So he does certainly have the credentials. And yeah, I mean, what I love is that Derby, well, the Valley, I should say, when you consider Themis, Mark, and Kurt, you know, these people from our tight little group in the lower Naugatuck Valley are starting to splash onto the state scene, and I love it.
Yeah, it is an interesting time to be a Valley Republican, I guess.
That's right. It's almost all red. I think Naugatuck, the council went. Yeah, I don't think that we had a Republican challenger for the mayor, but the Burgesses, if I remember correctly, went red.
Yeah, no, I haven't paid attention. See, we don't go that far. We're that local.
Don't go that far up?
We don't have enough money to go up that way. But all right, JR Romano, those were all my questions. I really appreciate you just with no prep calling us up and talking about Tuesday's election.
Eugene, you know that.
So anyway, on the line, as promised, is Andrew Backlick. He was the campaign manager for GOP challenger, now mayor-elect Rich Zekin. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking to the people of the Valley and the people of Derby.
Thank you for having me on. Very excited to stay involved. I was very excited to get involved, and I'm excited to talk to you guys.
So just going into Tuesday, did you have a feeling of complete nerves? Did you think it was going to be close? Did you think how did you think it was going to turn out?
Going into Tuesday, we had, all our measurables and all our metrics were showing that, yes, it was going to be close. We kind of had a range of possible outcomes that we considered. And, at this point, it really doesn't matter. So I can tell you what those ranges were. We had it looking like we were going to either win by as little as 53 votes or win by as many as 516 votes. I think the final tally was we won by 507, so I'm very surprised that it was on that high end because during Tuesday, we were an absolute nervous wreck in headquarters, and for me, it's my first election day, my first involvement in an election day, and trying to crunch those numbers all day was an absolutely nerve-wracking experience, and I had us at the end of the day, I had a piece of paper in my hand with my tally that showed us having 1,289 votes, people that we had identified. And I believe the mayor's final number was 1,292. So had that been accurate, we would have been so close that it would have required a recount. Luckily for us, and at the end of the day, that was not accurate. Huge victory to our, amazement, but also, it showed that our hard work paid off. Zeke walked the doors, and that was our strategy from day one. He shook hands with 2,500 people who promised them his vote, and promised him their vote, and it worked out that way. So.
And now, what's happening in general? Now there's a transition of some type is going to take place or is underway. What happens in the next few weeks now? I guess my question is.
Well, right now we have a transition team put together, and we are interviewing people for appointed positions. We still haven't been in City Hall, believe it or not. Obviously today is Veterans Day. Thank you for your service to all the veterans that are listening. So we really couldn't do too much today. We have some interviews for different positions, and we're trying to get the lay of the land. We'll go to City Hall early next week, and obviously we have Mark Garofalo, who's back in as the city clerk. We have Keith McLiberty, who's back in as the treasurer. Those two guys are going to be valuable assets for us in the transition. They already know the lay of the land. Something as simple as, hey, where do you keep the extra toilet paper around here? Those guys know. So we're going to use those guys, tap into their knowledge, and hopefully they can just give us a quick tour around the building and introduce us to everybody who works there. And, we're looking forward to being inaugurated and getting in there. And I believe it's the first Monday in December that, our administration comes in and takes over. So we want to be as prepared as possible for that day.
And has the campaign or the transition team already reached out to Keith McLiberty and Mark Garofalo?
Yes, absolutely. I personally have had multiple conversations with both of them. I know the mayor has had conversations with Mayor-elect, has had conversations with both of them. And, obviously they're both Democrats. We come from the Republican side of things, but I think you and I have had this conversation, Eugene. That really has never mattered to me. What matters to me is Derby. And I think we all are in agreement that we need to get to work. The financials that we blew the whistle on earlier this year are a reality. We are inheriting some of those issues. We are inheriting some of the good work that the mayor has done. We're grateful for that. But at the end of the day, Keith and Mark really have been on the ground floor of a lot of that stuff for quite some time. So their experience and their knowledge is going to be invaluable to us moving forward. And we've all pledged to work together and extend the olive branch across party lines and all that stuff. None of that matters. I don't think to anybody involved. At least that's what it seems so far. But
yeah, because I guess one thing that Mayor-elect Zekin is going to have to do is sort of bring the parties together. The Democrats are divided. I guess his plan is to act as a peacemaker with everybody. So it sounds like it's off to a start if you're in contact with Mark Garofalo and Keith McLiberty. It's all the moving parts are happening.
Yes, absolutely. I think you can safely say that.
So then just the thing that we were sort of talking about in this podcast now we're like deep into it. There were a bunch of stories. Kevin Rennie, a columnist for the Hartford Courant, had a column talking about Tuesday's election outside of the Valley, where the narrative was that, well, Democrats did well nationally, Democrats did well in the state of Connecticut, and this was, Kevin Rennie described it as the Trump rebuke, that it's beginning, this sort of anti-Trump backlash is bringing people to the polls, and that had an effect on the elections Tuesday. Now, J.R. Romano countered that by saying, well, if you look at it closely, that's really not true at all. But I'm just wondering, do you think like the national party scene and the things that were happening nationally and President Trump or the National Democrats, the Al Frankens, did that have any effect? Did you hear any of that when you knocked on doors? Do you think that helped or hurt Rich Zekin in any way?
I think Rich had one person who went to the door that said, "Oh, you're Republican. I hate Trump," and he slammed the door in his face. One person out of 2,500 doors that he hit. So no, we didn't feel that at all, and I don't think we really, to be honest with you. I think at this point, the people of Derby and the people of Ansonia, the people of Seymour, I think they're cognizant enough to realize that really the national picture doesn't matter much for us around here at this point. I mean, we have our own small town issues that have affected people here in the working class in a way that I don't think they really care party lines. I mean, Derby's, 3-1 Democrats to Republicans, and we somehow pulled out a 507 vote victory. Oh, I mean, I think for us it was a non-factor, and we didn't want to get into the political game statewide. We had the opportunity a couple of times to mention Governor Malloy and some of his policies, going to tie Mayor Delgado to that, and we chose not to go that route because really, what we care about is the citizens of Derby and trying to provide tax relief and make some good decisions.
I'll just jump in and say you broke up a little bit there, but you were just saying that you didn't take the opportunity to tie Mayor Delgado to Governor Malloy. Basically, you kept it very local.
I think we just felt like that was not a good strategy, and we all want what's best for Derby. And I said that multiple times about the mayor, about the aldermen. There's no question that if you get involved in politics on a local level, you have to have a care for your community. There's no doubt to me that the mayor had passion for Derby, and I know she was very upset, emotional when she won against Carmen. She was very upset and emotional when she lost the other night, and that just shows her devotion to the city, and we appreciate that about her. I didn't want to besmirch her by saying, "Oh, you're tied to the Democratic policies of Governor Malloy," because I don't know that really helped any of us.
Okay, and then my last question: you had mentioned the transition team. Like, how many people are on it? Who's on the transition team? Who's helping out at this point to get Mayor-elect Zekin ready to take office?
As of this point, myself, Mayor Zekin have taken a couple meetings by ourselves, just the two of us. I think it depends on what area we're looking at. We have a campaign treasurer in Judy Shevchuk who's got some clerical experience. She's helped us in that area a little bit when we're looking at administrative assistants and some other different positions where she's maybe a little bit more knowledgeable in some of the computer programs and things like that. We have Sam Palastro, who's the Republican Town Committee Chair, who has some experience working with unions and some of the other things that he's done, that he brings to the table. So basically right now it's more been in the conversational phase with about a lot of these things. In terms of actual sit-down interviews, those will be happening over the next couple of weeks, and we're still trying to evaluate, what that's going to look like. Like I said, we still have to get into City Hall and talk to the department heads and talk to everybody, and we didn't want to count our chickens before they were hatched Election Day.
Sure.
So as a result, we've kind of come to the situation now where we have a lot of work to do between now and December, when Rich actually walks into that building as the mayor.
Yeah, it's less than a month away.
Yes, less than a month away. And, I think there was a lot of criticism of us not having a plan and everything. We've had a plan in the works for quite some time, and we've had a team in mind for quite some time. It's just a matter of now kind of fine-tuning that, really looking at the charter. There's a lot. I will say this, Eugene, this has been a challenge for us. There's a lot of positions in City Hall, appointed positions, where the definitions, I think we're going to be tweaking some of those and moving some things around and moving some responsibilities around. But part of that, too, is securing our legal counsel and figuring out what we can and what we can't do. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. There's a lot of things that are challenging, coming in. And the mayor, I know, has offered her help and support, and we're looking forward to getting in there with her and really kind of getting down to brass tacks and figuring all this out. So,
all right. So you're a busy man. You got a lot to do, so I'll let you go. But I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and actually for the whole campaign being easy to work with. So I do appreciate that.
I agree. I look forward to keeping everybody informed, and we'll be doing so through not only the city website, but definitely through Valley Indy. And we look forward to a long and fruitful relationship. So thank you for having me on. Appreciate it. And thanks for your great coverage of the debate. and the elections, and I certainly was a fan long before I got involved. So thank you much.
All right, take care, Andrew. Thanks a lot. Okay, so that was Andrew Backlick. That was Rich Zekin's campaign manager. The only other election-related item I wanted to mention in Derby, I just bear with me as I bring it up on my cell phone. There is one recount happening. I didn't put it on valleyindy.org yet. We've just been sort of overwhelmed. But in the second ward, there is a recount scheduled for Tuesday, November 14th. This is from Derby Town Clerk Mark Garofalo, who just sent out the information. Tuesday, November 14th, recount votes for the second ward Board of Aldermen. It's taking place at 10 a.m., so that's 10 a.m. Tuesday. And that's the race. We had 3 seats open in the second ward. Democrats Ron Sill, Joe DiMartino, both incumbents. They took first and second place. But the third spot, which had been held by Art Gerkens, Jim Petrino, Republican, bested Art by 6 votes. So that triggered an automatic recount. So that'll happen Tuesday, November 14th at 10 a.m. in Derby City Hall. So, and the public's welcome. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, this was a wonderful podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you didn't mind us blabbering too much, but I want to thank Chris LaRocque, Stefan Bohuniak, J.R. Romano, and Andrew Backlick for their time. And we're going to have sort of a sister podcast to this episode. Kurt Miller is coming in shortly, so we'll probably post that immediately after this. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just